Time and value of supply. Section 12 to 15. Please remember, this is a very important section. Section 12 to 15. Time and value of supply. The section 12, the time of supply of goods. Section 13, the time of supply of services. Section 14, the change in the rate of tax in respect of supply of goods or services. Section 15, the value of taxable supply. Now let us discuss section 12 in detail. The time of supply of goods. The section 12 subsection 1, the liability to pay tax on the goods shall arise at the time of supply as determined in the accordance with the provisions of this section. The subsection 2, the time of supply of goods shall be the earlier of the following dates, namely A. The date of issue of invoice by the supplier or the last day on which he is required under the section 31 to issue invoice with respect to the supply, or the date on which the supplier receives the payment with respect to the supply, provided that where the supplier of the taxable goods receives an amount up to 1000 rupees in excess of the amount indicated in the tax invoice, the time of supply to the extent of such excess amount shall at the option of the said supplier be the date of issue of invoice in respect of the such excess amount. Explanation 1, for the purpose of the class A and D, B, the supply shall be deemed to have been made to the extent it is covered by the invoice, or as the case may be, the payment. Explanation 2, for the purpose of the class B, the date on which the supplier receives the payment shall be the date on which the payment is entered in his books of accounts, or the date on which the payment is credited to his bank account, whichever is earlier. Subsection 3. In the case of supplies, in respect of which the tax is paid or liable to be paid on the reverse charge basis, the time of supply shall be the earliest of the following dates, namely the date of receipt of the goods or the date of payment as entered in the books of accounts of the recipients, or the date on which the payment is debited in his bank account, whichever is earlier, or the date immediately following the 30 days from the date of issue of invoice, or any other documents by whatever name called in lieu thereof by the supplier, provided that where it is not possible to determine the time of supply under the class A or B or C, the time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of accounts of the recipients of the supply. The subsection 4, in the case of supply of vouchers by the supplier, the time of supply shall be the date of issue of voucher if the supply is identifiable at that point, or the date of redemption of the voucher in all other cases. Subsection 5, where it is not possible to determine the time of supply under these provisions of the subsection 2 or the subsection 3 or the subsection 4, the time of supply shall in the case where the periodical returns has to be filed be the date on which such return is to be filed, be in any other case be the date on which the tax is paid. Subsection 6, the time of supply to the extent it relates to an addition in the value of supply by way of interest, late fee, penalty, or for delayed payment of any consideration shall be the date on which the supplier receives such addition in the value. Now we will be discussing the section 13, the time of supply of services. The time of supply of services, the section 13 class subsection 1, the liability to pay tax on service shall arise at the time of supply as determined in accordance with the provision of this section. Subsection 2, The time of supply of service shall be the earliest of the following dates, namely the date of issue of invoice by the supplier if the invoice is issued within the period prescribed under the section 31, or the date of receipt of the payment, whichever is earlier, or the date of provision of service if the invoice is not issued within the period prescribed under the section 31, or the date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, or the date on which the recipient shows the receipt of service in his books of accounts in a case where the provisions of this class A or B do not apply, provided that where the supplier of the taxable service receives an amount up to 1000 rupees in excess of the amount indicated in the tax invoice, the time of supply to the extent of such excess amount shall, at the option of the said supplier, be the date of issue of invoice relating to the such excess amount. Explanation: for the purpose of class A and B, the supply shall be deemed to have been made to the extent it is covered by the invoice, or as the case may be, the payment. The date of receipt of payment shall be the date on which the payment is entered in the books of accounts of the supplier, or date on which the payment is credited to his bank account, whichever is earlier. Subsection 3. In the case of supplies in respect of which tax is paid or liable to be paid on the reverse charge basis, the time of supply shall be the earlier of the following dates, namely the date of payment as entered in the books of accounts of the recipients, or the date on which the payment is debited in his bank account, whichever is earlier, or the date immediately following 60 days from the date of issue of invoice, or any other document by whatever name called in lieu thereof by the supplier, provided that where there is not possible to determine the time of supply under the class A or class B, the time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of accounts of the recipients of the supply. Further, provided further that in case of supply by associated enterprises where the supplier of the service is located outside India, the time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of accounts of the recipients of the supply, or the date of payment, whichever is earlier. Subsection 4. In the case of supply of voucher by a supplier, the time of supply shall be the date of issue of voucher if the supply is identifiable at that point, or the date of redemption of voucher in all other cases. Subsection 5. Where it is not possible to determine the time of supply under the provisions of the subsection 2 or subsection 3 or subsection 4, the time of supply shall, in the case where the periodical returns has to be filed, be the date on which such return is to be filed, or in any other case, be the date on which the tax is to be paid. The subsection 6, the time of supply to the extent it relates to an addition in the value of supply by way of interest, late fee, or penalty by or for the delayed payment of any consideration shall be the date on which the supplier receives such addition in the value. Now we will be discussing the section 14, the change in the rate of tax in respect of supply of goods or services. Notwithstanding anything contained in section 12 or section 13, the time of supply where there is a change in the rate of tax in respect of goods or services or both shall be determined in the following manner, namely in case the goods or services or both have been supplied before the change in the rate of tax, where the invoice for the same has been issued and the payment is also received after the change in the rate of tax, the time of supply shall be the date of receipt of the payment, or the date of issue of invoice, whichever is earlier, or where the invoice has been issued period to the change in the rate of tax, but the payment is received after the change in the rate of tax, the time of supply shall be the date of issue of invoice, or where the payment has been received before the change in the rate of tax, but the invoice for the same is issued after the change in the rate of tax, the time of supply shall be the date of the receipt of the payment. In case the goods or services or both have not been supplied after the change in the rate of tax, where the payment is received after the change in the rate of tax, but the invoice has been issued prior to the change in the rate of tax, the time of supply shall be the date of receipt of the payment, or where the invoice has been issued and the payment is received before the change in the rate of tax, the time of supply shall be the date of receipt of the payment or the date of issue of invoice, whichever is earlier, or where the invoice has been issued after the change in the rate of tax but payment is received before the change in the rate of tax, the time of supply shall be the date of issue of invoice, provided that the date of receipt of payment shall be the date of credit in the bank account if such credit in the bank account is after 4 working days from the date of change in the rate of tax. Explanation: for the purpose of this section, the date of receipt of payment shall be the date on which payment is entered in the books of accounts of the supplier or the date on which the payment is credited to the bank account, whichever is earlier. Now we will be studying the section 15, value of taxable supplies. The value of taxable supplies, the section 15, subsection 1. The value of the supply of goods or services or both shall be the transaction value, which is the price actually paid or payable for the said supply of goods or services or both, where the supplier and the recipient of the supply are not related and the price is the sole consideration for the supply. Subsection 2. The value of supply shall include any taxes, duties, cess, fees, and charges levied under any law for the time being in force other than this Act, the State Goods and Service Tax Act, that Union Territory Goods and Service Tax Act, and Goods and Service Tax composition to the State Act if changed separately by charged separately by the supplier. Any amount that the supplier is liable to pay in relation to such supply, but which has been incurred by the recipient of the supply and not included in the price actually paid or payable for the goods or services or both. Incidental expenses, including commission and packing, charged by the supplier to the recipient of the supply, and any amount charged for anything done by the supplier in respect of supply of goods or services or both at the time of or before the delivery of the goods or services, supply of services, the interest or late fee or the penalty for the delayed payment of any consideration for any supply, and the subsidies directly linked to the price, excluding the subsidies provided by the central government and the state government. Explanation: for this purpose of this section, the amount of subsidy shall be included in the value of the supply of the supplier who receives the subsidy. Subsection 3. The value of the supply shall not include any discount which is given before or at the time of supply, if such discount has been duly recorded in the invoice issued in respect of such supply, and after the supply has been effected, if the such discount is established in terms of an agreement entered into or at or before the time of such supply and specifically linked to the relevant invoice, and the input tax credit as is attributable to the discount on the basis of document issued by the supplier has been reversed by the recipient of the supply. Subsection 4. Where the value of supply of goods or services or both cannot be determined under the subsection 1, the same shall be determined in such manner as may be prescribed. Subsection 5. Notwithstanding anything contained in the subsection 1 or subsection 4, the value of the such supplies as may be notified by the government, the recommendation of the council shall be determined in such a manner as may be prescribed. Explanation: for the purpose of this act, the person shall be deemed to be related person if such person are the officers or directors of one another business. Such a person are legally recognized partners in the business. Such persons are employers and employees. Any person directly or indirectly owns, controls, or holds 25% or more of the outstanding voting stock or shares of both of them. Um, the one of them directly or indirectly controls the other. Both of them are directly or indirectly controlled by the third person. Together, they directly or indirectly control the third person, or they are the member of the same family. The term person also includes legal person, person who are associated in the business of one another, in that one is the sole agent or the sole distributor or the sole concessionary. He, however, described of the other shall be deemed to be related. Shall be deemed to be related. Now we will be studying about input tax credit. The section 16 to 21 deals with input tax credit. The eligibility section 16 deals with the eligibility and the conditions for taking input tax credit. The subsection 1, every registered person shall subject to such conditions and restrictions as may be prescribed and in such a manner specified in the section 49 be entitled to take credit of input tax charge on any supply of goods or services or both to him which are used or intended to be used in the course of furtherance of any business, and the said amount shall be credited to the electronic credit ledger of the such person. Subsection 2, notwithstanding anything contained in this section, no registered person shall be entitled to credit of any input tax credit in respect of any supply of goods or services or both to him unless he is in possession of the tax invoice or debit note issued by the supplier registered under this act or such other tax paying documents as may be prescribed. The details of invoice or debit notes referred to in the section class A has been furnished by the supplier in the statement of outward supplies, and such details have been communicated to the recipient of the such invoice or debit note in the manner specified under the section 37. He has received the goods or services or both. Explanation for the purpose of this class it shall be deemed that the registered person has received the goods or services as the case may be services where the goods are delivered by the supplier to the recipient or any other person on the direction of the such registered person, whether acting as an agent or otherwise before or during the movement of goods, either by way of transfer of document of the title of the goods or otherwise where the services are provided by the supplier to any person on the directions of on the behalf account of such registered person. The details of input tax credit in respect of the said supply communicated to such registered person under section 38 has not been restricted. The section subject to the provisions of the section 41, the tax charge in respect of a such supply has been actually paid to the government either in cash or through utilization of input tax credit admissible in respect of the said supply, and he has furnished the return under the section 39 provided that they where the person the goods against an invoice are received in lots or installment, the registered person shall be entitled to take credit upon the receipt of the last lot or installment, provided further that where the recipient fails to pay to the supplier of the goods or services or both other than the supplies on which the tax is payable on the reverse charge basis, the amount towards the value of supply along with the tax payable thereon within a period of 180 days from the date of issue of the invoice. The supplier the supplier an amount equal to the input tax rate availed by the recipient shall be shall be paid by him along with interest payable under the section 50 in such a manner as may be prescribed, provided also that the a recipient shall be entitled to avail the credit of input tax on the payment made by him to the supplier of the amount towards the value of the supply or goods or services or both, along with the taxable tax payable thereon. The substitute for the explanation for the purpose of this class, it shall be deemed that registered person has received the goods where the goods are delivered by the supplier to the recipient or any other person on direction of the such registered person, whether acting as an agent or otherwise, before or during the movement of the goods, either by way of transfer of document of the title to the goods or otherwise. Um, Substitute for the section 41, the Central Goods and Service Tax Act 2018, dated 30 August 2018. 2018, the subsection 3, where the registered person has claimed the depreciation on the tax component of the cost of the capital goods and the plant and machinery under the provisions of Income Tax Act 1961, the input tax rate on the said tax component shall not be allowed. The A subsection 4, the registered the person shall not be entitled to take input tax rate in respect of any invoice or debit note for the supply of goods or both goods or services or both after the 30th day of November following the end of the financial year to which such invoice or debit note pretends or furnishing of the relevant annual returns, whichever is earlier, provided that the registered person shall be entitled to take input tax rate after the due date of furnishing of the return under the section 39 or the month of the September 2018 till the due date of furnishing of the return under the said scenario said section the for the month of March 2019 in respect of any invoice or invoice relating to such a debit note for the supply of goods or services or both made during the financial year 1718, the details of which has been uploaded by the supplier under the subsection 1 of the section 37 till the due date for furnishing the details under the subsection 1 of the section said section for the month of March 2019, the 2019, the apportionment of credit and block credit, section 17, apportionment of credit and block credit, the section 17, this subsection 1, where the goods or services or where the goods or services are both used by the registered person directly by registered person partly for the purpose of any business and partly for other purpose, the amount of credit shall be restricted to so much of the input tax rate as is attributable to the purpose of the purpose of its business. Subsection 2, where the goods or services or both are used by the registered person partly for effecting the taxable supplies, including zero rated supplies under this act or under the Integrated Goods and Service Tax Act, and partly for effecting the exempt supplies under the said acts, the amount of credit shall be restricted to so much of the input tax as is attributable to the said the taxable supplies, including the zero rated supplies. Subsection 3, the value of the exempt supply under the subsection 2 shall be is such as may be prescribed and shall include the supplies on which the recipient is liable to pay tax on the reverse charge basis. Transaction in the securities sale of good land and subject to the class B of the paragraph 5 of the schedule to sale of building. Explanation for the purpose of this subsection, the expression value of exempt supply shall not include the value of activities of the transaction specified in the Schedule 3. A. The value of activities or the transactions specified in the paragraph 5 of the said schedule, and the value of the such activities or the transactions as may be prescribed in respect of the class A of the paragraph 8 of the said schedule, said schedule, the a subsection 4, the banking company or the financial institution, including a non-banking financial company, engaged in the supplying services by way of accepting deposits, extending loans, or advances, shall have the option to either comply with the provisions of subsection 2 or avail of every month an amount equal to 50% of the eligible input tax credit on the inputs, capital goods, and input services in that month, and then rest shall lapse, provided that the option once exercised shall not be withdrawn during the remaining part of the financial year, provided further that the restriction of 50% shall not apply to the tax paid on the supplies made by one registered person to another registered person having the same permanent account number. Subsection 5, notwithstanding anything contained in the subsection 1 of the section 16 and subsection 1 of the section 18, the input tax rate shall not be available in respect of the following, namely motor vehicle for the transportation of a person having approved seating capacity of no more than 13 person, the further the supply of such motor vehicle or transportation of the passengers or parting training on driving such motor vehicles, the vessels and aircraft, except when they are used for making the following taxable supplies, namely the further supply of such vehicles of or aircraft, or transportation of the passengers, or imparting training on navigating such vessels, or imparting training on flying such aircraft for the transportation of the goods, the service of the general insurance, the servicing, repair, and the maintenance in so far as they relate to the motor vehicle, vehicles, or the aircraft referred to in the class A or class A, for provided that the input tax rate in respect of the such services shall be available where the motor vehicle, vehicles or aircraft referred to in the class A or class A are used for the purpose specified therein, where received by a taxable person engaged in the manufacture of the such motor vehicle, vehicles or aircraft, or in the supply of general insurance services in respect of such motor vehicles, vessels, or aircraft insured by him, the following supply of goods or services, or both food and beverage, the outdoor catering, beauty treatment, the health insurance, hence health services, cosmetic and plastic surgery, leasing, renting or hiring of motor vehicles, vessels, aircraft referred to in the class A or B, except when used for the purpose specified in life insurance and health insurance, provided that the input tax rate in respect of the such goods or services of both the shall be available where an inward supply of such goods or services of both is used by the registered person for making an outward taxable supply of such same category of goods or services of both, or as an element of the taxable, the a composite or mixed supply, membership of the club, health and fitness center, and the travel benefits extended to the employees on vocation, such as leave or home travel concession, provided that the input tax rate in respect of the goods or the services or both shall be available where it is obligatory for the employer to provide the same to it employer under any law for the time being in force. The work contract services when supplied for the construction of a removable property other than the plant and machinery, except where it is an input tax, service for further supply of work contract services. The goods or services are both received by taxable supply a person for construction of an removable property other than the plant and machinery on his own account, including when such goods or services or both are used in the course of furtherance of business. Explanation for the purpose of this class C and D. The expression construction includes reconstruction, renovation, additions, alteration, or repairs to the extent of capitalization to the said immovable property, goods or services or both on which the tax has been paid under section 10. The goods or services are both received by the non-resident taxable person except and on goods imported by him. The goods or services are both received by the taxable person which are used or intended to be used for the activities relating to his obligation under the corporate social responsibility referred to in section 135 of the Companies Act 2013. The goods services are both used for personal consumption. Goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, or disposed of by way of gift or free the sample and any tax paid on accordance with the provisions of the section 74, 129 and 130. The substitute for or motor vehicle and other conveyance except when they are used for making the following taxable services. The supplies, namely the further supply of such vehicles or conveyance or the transportation of the passengers or imparting training on the driving, flying, navigating such vessels or conveyance for the transportation of goods. The following, namely supply of goods or services both the food and beverage, the outdoor catering, the beauty training, beauty, the health insurance services, cosmetic and plastic surgery, except where an inward supply of goods or services or both of a particular category is used by the registered person for making an outward taxable supply of the same the category of the goods or services or both or as an element of the taxable composite on the mixed the supply the membership the of the club health and insurance the fitness center the rent a cab the life insurance health insurance except where the government notifies us service which are obligatory for an employer to provide to its employees under any law for the time being enforced the or such the inward the supply of goods or services of both the or an amount equal to the amount incurred to the or both as the part of the taxable composite of mixed supply and travel benefit extended to employees on vacation such as the leave encashment or home the travel aspiration subsection 6. The government may prescribe the following manner in which the credit referred to in the subsection 1 and 2 may be attributed explanation for the purpose of this chapter and chapter 6. The expression plant machinery means apparatus, equipment, the equipment and machinery fixed to the earth by foundation or structural support that are used for making outward supply of goods or services of both and includes such foundation and structural supports but excludes land, building or any other civil structure, the telecommunication towers the pipelines laid outside the factory premises. The